I signed the papers at the kitchen table, the thick envelopes resting heavily between us. Her family had offered me $3 million to leave quietly. The check was real, the signatures notarized, and the arrangement unambiguous. I smiled, small and controlled, not out of glee, but because I understood the weight of the leverage I now held. I folded the documents neatly and handed them back. She didn't look at me. She avoided my eyes as though I might betray some unspoken understanding if we met. I felt a faint prickle of loss, a ghost of something we had once shared, but it was fleeting. I had learned long ago that pain did not need to be loud to be real. The history of us lingered in memory, like faint scratches on a mirror. Our early mornings, when sunlight caught the steam of coffee cups, seemed distant now, as though they belonged to someone else. The small betrayals, the dinners canceled, the silent phone calls, the nights I came home to a house that felt empty despite her presence, these had compounded, almost imperceptibly, until the larger betrayal became inevitable. I had known, somewhere deep in the quiet corners of my mind, that this day would arrive. Her pregnancy had been the signal, the tipping point. Twins, she said. His twins. The boss. I remembered the shock, the pulse of disbelief, the hollow emptiness that follows when someone you trusted inhabits a life that no longer includes you. And yet, the offer had arrived. $3 million to sign, a clean exit, a chance to close the chapter on terms dictated not by emotion but by calculation. Signing had been deliberate. My smile was a gesture of understanding, of patience, of quiet reclaiming of the narrative. There was power in the act itself, power not wielded aggressively, not as punishment, but as acknowledgement. The world had offered me a choice, and I had exercised it with calm precision. The wedding day arrived. I attended, not to observe spectacle, but because the unfolding would be instructive in its own way. The ceremony was meticulously organized, faces polite, words measured. Guests whispered, children laughed, flowers swayed gently in the breeze. I stood on the edge of it all, emotionally conflicted, detached yet attentive. Her smile as she approached him was luminous, rehearsed, unburdened, or so it seemed. I had learned to read the half-second shifts in expression, the subtleties of hesitation that often betray hidden truths. I noticed a momentary flicker, a tension in the way she held her hands, a glance she didn't meet directly. It was nothing she could control, and nothing I could intervene in. Silence was my choice, observation my method. Then came the arrival of the DNA results. The lawyer, calm, professional, carrying a sealed envelope, made his entrance. Authority manifested in a precise, unmistakable moment. The murmur of guests fell away. The officiant paused, a gentle but firm hand signaling attention. I watched as the envelope was opened, the documents examined, the truth revealed with quiet finality. The expression on her face shifted: shock, disbelief, and then a subtle fracture of composure. My own reaction was restrained, almost imperceptible. It was not triumph, it was the acknowledgement of consequence. The authority figure's words were measured, devoid of theatrics, and yet the effect was undeniable. The power dynamic had shifted, a concrete and irreversible reordering of roles. Her family, previously confident, now fumbled through explanations, their gestures small and uncertain. They had attempted to control the outcome through money, influence, and persuasion. But none of it could counter the empirical truth laid bare. I remained at the periphery, a silent observer, my dignity intact. The twins, his twins, as it turned out, not hers, had been the pivot of the deception, the axis on which the family's assumptions had turned. Their presence in the narrative, irrelevant yet symbolically potent, became the fulcrum of clarity. I realized that the real leverage had always been patience, discretion, and a refusal to act rashly. I had waited for authority to intervene, for clarity to crystallize, and in that waiting, the moral and practical balance shifted entirely. The ceremony continued, awkwardly, with muted acknowledgments and careful motions. Relationships strained visibly, the laughter felt brittle, the congratulatory words clipped. I felt a complex mix of relief, sadness, and the quiet hum of vindication. Not triumph, not revenge, but the restoration of equilibrium. Later, alone, I reflected on the moments that mattered: the signing of the papers, the observation of subtle truths, the waiting for authority to assert clarity. None of it had been loud, none of it required drama, and yet the consequence had been total. I understood, finally, that dignity is reclaimed not by spectacle, but by control over one's own reactions, by strategic patience, by the refusal to let betrayal dictate the pace or tone of one's life. I left the wedding quietly, unnoticed, carrying only the awareness that the narrative had shifted. She, her family, and he were left to reconcile the truths revealed. I carried neither joy nor bitterness, only the calm understanding that some stories resolve themselves when the truth is allowed to speak. In the end, there was no celebration, no overt victory. The consequence was undeniable, external, and professional. Internally, I felt an unexpected redemption. Not over them, not even over the circumstances, but over the erosion of my own sense of self that had accompanied the betrayal. There was clarity where there had once been confusion, composure where there had once been tension, and a quiet assurance that some things, patience, dignity, restraint, cannot be taken from you, even when the world conspires otherwise. And so life moved forward. Relationships remained fractured, trust altered permanently, and yet the quiet victory persisted, the moral center unshaken, the leverage exercised subtly, the soul intact. I carried with me the understanding that redemption, when unexpected, is more enduring than any outward display of triumph.